Hello friends, how are you all? I hope you all are doing great. So in the previous video we studied about Tendulkar committee and Rangarajan committee for measuring poverty. Okay. So in this class we will be going to discuss about which poverty line should we adopt. We have studied that these were all the poverty line suggestions, methods of measuring poverty suggestions. Okay, there were different committees also, but which should we adopt? Okay, so to answer this question, Niti Aayog, the government's primary think tank, has finally decided that the country needs a freshly defined poverty line to help track the success and outreach of its poverty alleviation method. So in 2015, Niti Aayog has constituted a task force on poverty, which was not able to define the poverty line. It had made the following observation on the measurement of poverty line. Okay, so first one was that continue with the Tendulkar poverty line. Second, switch to Rangarajan or other higher urban, rural and urban poverty lines. Third, track progress over time of the bottom 30% of the population. And fourth one is track process along specific component of poverty such as nutrition, housing, drinking water, sanitation, electricity and connectivity. So these were the four options that were available to the Niti Aayog. And if I talk about the third and fourth point, in which I talked about the tracking progress. Okay, first we were tracking progress of the bottom 30% of the population. Second, we were tracking progress of specific component of the poverty such as nutrition, etc. Okay, so these two are basically not the substitute. I told you about the options, but these two won't be called as substitute, they would be called as complement. Okay, because these two are complement, these two should be used together, and that is why they are the complement one. So now this requires, since these two are complement, this requires that we should either choose the Tendulkar one or the Rangarajan one. So the main criticism of the Tendulkar committee or Tendulkar poverty line was that it has been too low. Okay, and corresponding to it, corresponding to the counter argument, okay, that it is too low. Okay, so the counter argument, however, is that if our objective is to assess whether we are making progress in bringing household out of extreme poverty, it makes sense to the set of poverty line at a level that allow households to get 2 square meal a day and other basic necessities of life. So it was too low, but there was counter argument also for that Tendulkar. Okay, Tendulkar one. And the key source of public dissatisfaction with the Tendulkar line was that it would deprive many households in need of the government assistance from such assistance by classifying them with above poverty line, because since the poverty line was too low, so due to this, someone who is just above the poverty line, they won't get any assistance from the government, because they are above poverty line, and you know that poverty line is already low, so they are the one who will be suffering. Okay, so if I tell you in the conclusion, it must be recognized that judgments on what represent a basic necessity of life would vary from person to person, and this is what makes the choice of poverty line difficult. Therefore, the final decision on this question need to be informed by further deliberations that pay adequate attention to the fact that the objective behind an official poverty line is to track progress in combating extreme poverty and not identification of the poor for purpose of distributing government benefits. So this was all about the choosing of poverty line, which should be choose, and we saw that what are the drawbacks and what are the what should we actually looking for. We should be actually looking to eradicate poverty, not to the basic purpose of poverty line is to just eradicate the poverty, but we are deviating from it, and we are focusing on those poor people that they should get benefit from the government policy. Okay, so the basic purpose should be of the eradicating policy, not to find out the people whom should be needing the whom should be needing the government benefit policies. Okay, get benefit from the government policies. So now we will be discussing the measures that is taken by the government to reduce poverty. So the topic will be reducing poverty in India. Okay, so India has made a tremendous progress in reducing absolute poverty in past 2 decades. The standard way to determine whether a household is poor is to compare its daily expenditure per capita to minimum consumption threshold or poverty line. Based on the India's official line, the share of population living in poverty was half between 1994 to 2012, falling from 45% to 22%. During this period, an astonishing 133 million people were lifted out of poverty. 133 million people was lifted out of the poverty. Okay, they were above the poverty line now. And moreover, the pace of poverty reduction accelerated over the time and was 3 times faster between 2005 to 2012. Okay, so the data, you need to collect the data, the current data and whatever data we had in this time period. Okay, so you need to check out that data in the official site, because it's very important to get updated what is going in the economy, what is the current rate going. Okay, so you should always google that, okay, and see on their official website, you will get all the data. Okay, so the fall in poverty level could have been much higher if the growth had been more inclusive. Notably, while consumption levels have increased rapidly in recent years, the poorest 40% of the household have seen their income grow at a slower pace than the population as a whole. On this measure of shared prosperity or equitable improvement among all the people, India lags behind countries at a similar stage of development. Although India ranked 16th among the 51 middle income countries in average consumption growth during 2005 and 2012. Okay, so if I talk about high growth, in many cases when a country experiences high growth, rapid poverty reduction quickly follows. High growth leads to rapid poverty reduction. However, in the case of India, high growth did not lead to as quick as decline in poverty as we would have expected. The responsiveness of poverty to per capita GDP growth in India is lower than the average for the developing country. A few telling indicators reveals the extent of this divergence. While India ranked in the top 10% of the developing countries in per capita GDP during the year 2005 and 2012. And in 2012, India was home to 262 million poor. Yes. If I want to tell you in terms of population, 1 in 4 people living in extremely poverty across the world are Indian. 1 out of 4. It was based on 2012, 2005 to 2012. 1 out of 4 people in the world that are extremely poor are Indian. So poverty is also intertwined with the geography. Like if you go in village, you will find that, and villages, Indian villages, which are home to the 80% of the country's poor. So though the poor are still far away from getting the basic benefit over there. Like it is a geographical concept. Like if you go in village, you will find more poor comparatively to urban society. In 2012, three large lower income states alone, that were UP, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and Madhya Pradesh, accounted for 44% of India's poor. These three states only accounted for 44% of India's poor. After that, in 2005, 37% of individuals in India were poor. By 2012, this had fallen to only in 5, 1 in 5. And in other words, if I would say that roughly 15% of the population that was poor in 2005 was no longer poor by 2012. Reassuringly, we may find that households that escaped poverty after 2005 still had consumption level that was dangerously close to the poverty line in 2012. In other words, large number of those who managed to move out of poverty by 2012 are still vulnerable to slipping back. A simple simple approach basically to define vulnerability is by doubling the poverty line. That is, all individuals who are above the regular poverty line but below this double line are defined as vulnerable. So it was only a suggestion or a approach. By using this approach, we observed that about half of India's population was vulnerable in 2012, stuck between poverty and the relative stability of the middle class. Indeed, the vulnerable continue to be the largest population group over the period. Okay, so this was all about today's class. In the next class, we will study more about this, more about the timeline of India in context of eradicating the poverty. So thank you guys.